Morning, everybody. This is Brett at Prey Performance. I've been meaning to do this video for a while. I'm going to take the time out of this morning to do it. So there's been a lot of debate about drop-in rods and pistons and, weights and blah, blah, blah. So as you guys know, I go with what fits myself and my customers and my performance goals first and foremost. What company it's from, what brand it is, whatever, doesn't really matter to me. As long as the performance there and it does what I need it to do. It kind of goes with everything that I do. So, I honestly didn't think there's anybody who could spec cams better or port heads or any of that stuff better. So I did it myself. There's some engine builders out there that are better than me, and I use their stuff. And there's some products that I would have developed my own if I had the connections, but I don't. So don't get caught up in the BS internet rivalries. Behind the scenes, a lot of them don't exist. However, so as I've been very public about, I run the GPI Drop In rods and pistons on all my stuff. So what I want to discuss is why and the features and things like that. So really, we'll start with the piston. And also notice it has GPI's name on it because they're the ones that had this stuff contracted and built, and they regulate the output product. But it's everything that I would have done or requested in a piston. But it's brand name stuff, dude. Diamond pistons, Cali's Comstar rods, calico coated Cleveite bearings. So just because someone's company's name on it, they just helped develop it. But the product behind it, is known companies. So let's talk about the pistons themselves. So the reason I want to go with these is, as you can see, it's this valve relief right here. So I haven't found another company at the moment, and granted, usually once I get into a product, I kind of just stick with it and then continue to develop. But it's a 2000s cut, allows us to run just about any camshaft that we want. What Ryan and the boys did over there is you can see this dome that they put back on the back of the piston to make up for the fly cut. So, or basically the valve relief. So this dome comes back and allows us to run the stock 11.5 compression. Now, they put this cut in here for the spark plug. However, you do have to be careful with how much you mill and stuff like that. So either you have to run a non-protruded plug or you have to go old school and clock your plugs. But as you can tell, this is a standard diamond piston. It's got plenty of thickness, the 1.5 mil rings, oil and whatnot. But what I like also is that this is a fully all the way around skirt, for one, and two, you don't have to cut or mill anything off the back around your reluctor wheel on your crank. I'm actually a big Wiseco fan. If I have a choice, I run Wisecos and everything. However, Diamond pretty much knocked it out of the park with this piston. The other thing is you have the dual spiral locks, which aren't hard to install at all. I'll make a video about that at another time. But really, this piston has all the features that we would need. I've personally just dropped these in a motor, and I think we made 940 or 960 wheel with Whipple. No issues whatsoever. And that was their base package. They don't recommend that. They have a tool steel pin or a thicker pin that goes with it. Still a drop-in deal. But these are just the Cali's Comstar LS rods. It even says 6.125 LS1. But what they did is they matched all the weights. Now, I've heard a lot of complaints about the weight doesn't match and it's out of balance, needs to be balanced, and all that other stuff. Before I get into that, also, you've got the calico coated Cleveite bearings, and they offer an X bearing as well. So here's the deal. The block and crank and all that stuff from GM basically sucks. Their machining processes, their QC, all that stuff is pretty much garbage. They have a wide range of tolerances that's allowed, and they utilize them. I'll just put it that way. So what we found is so we've done probably 6 or 7 of these builds, and every time that we do one, I do actually take this stuff to my machinist. He goes through the blocks and checks the equipment that we put it in and balances everything. Will these drop in and run? Yeah, because they're the same weight and all that stuff as the stock equipment. The problem is this stuff, since they're built by absolute professionals, are way more accurate than what comes in your motor stock from GM. So you may end up with perfect pistons, perfect rods, perfect clearances. The problem is you're dealing with manufactured junk. So the block itself, we found, cylinders out around, taper at the top and the bottom so the middle's wide, all kinds of wild stuff, piston and wall clearances that are wrong. It's not the piston that's wrong. It's not the weights that's wrong. It's the block that's wrong. It's the stock machining that's wrong. So same thing with line honing, line boring, all that stuff. Tolerances on your crank bearings and your rod bearing clearances. Most of the motors that we take apart are between 0.0009 and 0.0012 to 15 clearances. 0.022 to 0.025 is the minimum we want to shoot for when we're talking rod and bearing clearances. The line hones are 99% of the time out of whack. The crank itself was never balanced properly. The closest we've ever had a crank come was like 14 grams in the rear and 12 grams in the front. Some have been out as far as 28 grams. So that being said, when you're saying, yeah, I have a drop-in rod and piston set, the rod and piston and bearings and all that stuff, the weights are proper. The problem is the GM stuff, stock, sucks. So us personally at Prey Performance, anytime we do one of these kits, I take that motor and all this stuff to my machine shop, and I let Ricky go through and do his magic. So we come out, we've got a good product. I would hate to drop, $1,700, let's say, of equipment into a bad motor that had tight bearing clearances and all that stuff to begin with, or bad line hone. Then all of a sudden something happens to the motor, and where's the blame going to go first and foremost? To the product that you dropped in. That motor would have gone to hell in a handbasket regardless with the stock stuff eventually. Now, it's not a bash session on GM or propping up GPI. It's just simple facts, guys. That's all I deliver. I don't really care other than that. So can you drop these in? Yes. Should you? I would say no to any of that stuff. If you're going to spend the money and do it right. Find a proper machine shop. Have everything checked. Have all your stuff squared up. This equipment we've found in the last, I think we've done 7 sets now. I think this will be 8, and we got 9 and 10 on the way. Haven't found any issues with this. The issue lies in the block, in the machining, in the crank balance stock. So take that for what it's worth. One other thing I want to discuss with this is you're going to have to file fit your rings no matter what. And you may have to take a little clearance out of here depending on how much you're going to take off of your cylinder heads and your gaskets. But anyway, I hope this sheds a little bit of light on what we're doing, why we're doing it. And I've heard, good, bad, and indifferent about the GPI drop-in stuff. So this is just my opinion and why we do it. I'm not saying this is the only brand out there. This is just the brand that did it first, that did it the way I would have done it. And, if you find a brand that does the same stuff and you want us to put it in, as long as it goes in the machine shop and all checks out, we'll be more than happy to do that. All right, y'all. Have a good day.